I never saw this clip until David Lynch died, but I saw people sharing it on social media of Angelo Badalamenti talking about how he came up with Laura Palmer's theme.
And she's walking towards the camera and she's coming closer. Just keep building it. Just keep building it. And she's getting close. Now reach some kind of climax. And I would go, and he said, oh, that's it. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. I think
Like
I
him.
actually shared it when he
Oh,
died.
maybe I
Yeah, it
saw
was
it from you.
one of my many clips. Yeah.
That was
Really,
so
really
funny.
great.
Yeah.
I mean, that
So funny, but also
theme's
like really like sweet. Like it was cool.
yeah, it's a really beautiful theme. It's unlike anything, and when you picture them always composing together, and like that was like their big thing. You picture Lynch just right there,
Hmm.
influencing every move. Yeah.
Yeah. If he's like it's building up and he's like, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
Angelo. Yes,
Yeah.
Angelo. Keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right
yeah.
there, Angelo. Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, well,
so
this is
fun.
our David Lynch tribute, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, and then this was actually in the middle of the Los Angeles fires in January. January was a tough month for people like America, like Trump, fires, and then David Lynch passed on top of it, in the middle of all that, and it was in the middle of the LA fires, and then specifically, I think, he was already diagnosed with. I feel like a reporter now. I don't know the exact
It
like the exact thing he was diagnosed with, but his lungs
it was
were
emphysema.
yeah, his lungs were a little messed up because we all know that man loved to smoke cigarettes, and uh, he happily did his entire life as he created so much wonderful stuff. And we've had our moments with David Lynch on the pod where we talked about like maybe Mulholland Drive and Twin Peaks and other things, and we just felt like even though we're a little late to this, like it was necessary to somehow pay him tribute, somehow do a little memorial thing because he's one of the most important people in film and art and Hollywood history, just all of that like put together. And yeah. So this is what we're why we're doing it today before since January just passed, and yeah. And John, you watched a bunch of David Lynch movies recently, right? Like just to uh
Yeah, but
prepare.
I coincidentally, I guess I had been kind of on a David Lynch kick like right
Oh,
before
good.
he died. Um, and so I like rewatched Blue Velvet like the week before he died, and then I was
Mm.
like, oh man, okay, this is making me wanna like
Watch more, yeah.
rewatch
Yeah.
other things because I feel like I most of his stuff I had only besides Mulholland Drive, I'd pretty much seen everything once
Yeah.
that I had seen. Yeah. And then I hadn't
Which isn't
seen,
enough.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Except for I guess Mulholland Drive and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, I'd seen more than once. Um but yeah, and then I had seen Straight Story or The Elephant Man yet. Um so I made sure to get those in so I could yeah complete his feature filmography for
Right.
myself. And yeah, and then since I've been rewatching all of his other stuff, did rewatch Mulholland Drive, Inland Empire, Twin Peaks: The Return. Wild at Heart is the one the rewatch I didn't get to because you cannot find it like anywhere.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Jake had it
Um,
on DVD and it was like not Blu-ray. It was like just DVD, and it was clearly like one of those that was hard to find, and it was like kind of put in his collection with the others that are hard to find that he had, which somehow he
yeah.
like finding like Abel Ferrara movies or something like that, like where somehow he owned like this Abel Ferrara movie on DVD, and then Wild at Heart was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't think about how valuable those DVDs are until like they're not some of these things just aren't on streaming services ever. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, anyway,
So yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, John watched a lot. I've watched a few. Um, just to like prepare for the episode. It's so hard to watch it all because Twin Peaks is one of those things. Um, but I will definitely watch more after the episode to continue my own personal remembrance of David Lynch. And as you kind of, as we said, like I think you got to watch like every film a lot to really get them. And like for instance, I watched Inland, and as did you watch Inland too? Right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That's my second time, and I still think I have like six more watches to go before
Yeah.
I fully get it. And then maybe I'll get it then, and then I'll like be able to watch it more after that to understand it. It's kind of like the inherent vice of David Lynch movies, I like to think, where you just gotta keep on hammering away at that thing.
Yeah, I saw someone say it's like the final boss of David Lynch
Yeah, that's true.
movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I still,
Um,
so this is also my second time. And I think it was working for me more the second time, but
yeah, yeah.
it's still something I wish it was, I don't know, I wish I could wrap my head around it more to get more out of it. So that's why I think I need to, yeah, watch it a couple more times still.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
it is just different. And
Yeah, yeah.
the camcorder kind of throws you off a little bit. Because that just it's already weird and strange on its own, but then it's like it almost looks like audition tapes. Which is maybe
I
intentional. I
think
don't
partly
know.
the point, yeah.
Yeah. Because I, just like those early scenes where Laura Dern is talking to Laura Palmer's mom. Can't think of
Yeah, yeah.
her name, and it's just like a shot on Laura Dern
Right,
delivering
right.
lines.
Yeah, yeah.
Cut. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's
it's
so
so basic
yeah,
and
yeah.
weird.
Intentionally
Yeah,
basic. Yeah.
yeah.
I think I wanted to start off by like talking about our own personal David Lynch journeys. You want to start off, John? Like, when's the first time you
Sure.
saw David Lynch, and what did you think? What was it you watched? Where did you go from there? Like, how did that evolution go? It's like it's like the WTF of your David Lynch career.
Yeah, yeah.
Your David Lynch
So who are
watching
your
career.
guys? Who are
Yeah.
your guys
Who are you
in
guys
the
who got you
Lynch
into
world?
Lynch? Who was there when you were watching David
Yeah.
Lynch?
Well,
Who was
actually,
around then? Did I
one of
know
my
him?
guys. Yeah. Where'd you start? You start there? Start there?
Yeah. At the
Okay,
Boston?
yeah,
David
yeah.
Lynch was at the Boston?
At the comedy stop
The
in Boston,
comedy
yeah.
stop.
At the Chuckle Hut.
Yeah.
You were at the Chuckle Hut in Columbus? Yeah, yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
that's word for
Do
word
you ever
what
do
it
that
was.
club?
The
Yeah.
Chuckle Hut in Columbus. Yeah.
But actually, you were one of I credit you
Actually,
for
my influence was you
it was you
all
all along.
along. That's why I asked
Um,
the question because,
you just wanted to
I
get the
knew it was
credit.
coming back, like
But so my first like real experience with David Lynch was this was pre-podcast days, when I watched Mulholland
the
Drive,
dark days.
the dark days before the podcast. I'd heard of David Lynch and Twin Peaks, Eraserhead, but and I heard a lot about Mulholland Drive just because I was, getting into movies and people were saying that Mulholland Drive was like a crazy movie. So I remember watching that. I think I've told this on the podcast before, but I was like in my apartment that I shared with my wife, girlfriend at the time, I believe, and I was home alone one night and I was like, I'm gonna watch this movie, Mulholland Drive, that I've read so much about being like a crazy movie that, will stick with you and everything. And so I started watching it. I had no idea really what to expect. My first
Yeah.
experience with David Lynch, and I found it so weird.
Yeah.
It starts out, where they're going up Mulholland Drive and the car's driving through the
Mhm.
hills, and it's like very ominous. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And
Right.
And then, getting kind of a little confused as to what's going on. And we get to the
Yeah.
diner scene. And that was where it really lost me in the diner scene because you don't know who these characters are. And then they go start walking out to the back. And I was wondering, what is going on here? And then that jump scare at the
Yeah, yeah.
dumpster, I honestly turned it off after that because I was like, oh shit, I don't
Oh,
know
you
if
were
I'm
done.
ready. I don't
You were
know if I'm
done?
ready for this right now.
Wow.
And then so I honestly
Well, you were
stopped
alone
there.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had no idea what to expect. And that
Yeah.
honestly like scarred me immediately. Immediately. And
Yeah. I didn't watch another David Lynch for 5 years
so
after
yeah,
that.
that 10 years later. No, so then it was like the next day,
Mm.
I think I watched it again. Or I started over and I watched it and I like knew it was coming. And then I watched it all the way through. And then I was like, wow, that was like insane, crazy. Um,
Yeah.
and it was like not what I expected at all. And I didn't know really how to take it in. I remember once we started doing the podcast more is when you would, I think this was like probably, I mean, you'll talk about your story, but then you might have really gotten into David Lynch,
Yeah.
a couple years before this.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about Twin Peaks a lot. And um, I think you mentioned that I should like try and start getting into Twin Peaks, which I think was on Netflix at the time. And then so yeah,
Different
from there,
times. Yeah, it's on
yeah,
Netflix. That even seems like it dates the story, right? Like
yeah,
Twin Peaks is
yeah,
on Netflix. Because I know it. It's like in my consciousness. Like I know it's not on Netflix. Weird.
yeah. And I think so this would have been after The Return had come out already too. So maybe that was it, was that you had just seen The Return. So it was
Yeah.
kind of like getting you back into it. So then I think you had started to tell me about it. And so yeah, then I got into Twin Peaks and then that was kind of that opened the floodgates really was getting into Twin Peaks and then it was like wanting to see more of this type of thing. So then getting through The Return and I mean, in between, I didn't finish like all of Twin Peaks before I watched his other movies. I think I had
You
started to
went.
get into Twin
Yeah.
Peaks and then watched Blue Velvet and Eraserhead. Um,
It's a lot of Lynch at once.
yeah. Then I really started to dive in. And then I think I watched the original series of Twin Peaks, and then I don't think I watched The Return until maybe a year or so
Mm.
later. But I just feel like it's something over time that I've just gotten more and more into. The more I like, I don't know, rewatch or even just like think about or watch David Lynch interviews, I just think it's really interesting what he does, and there's nothing like it. And that there's sometimes where now I'm finding myself in a mood to watch something like a David Lynch movie because something more just like real and not surreal. It's like I almost like I need more, like
Mm.
I think I've become desensitized now to the strangeness of David Lynch, where it's like when you first start drinking coffee to tie it
Yeah.
into Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like I remember like, oh, this is so like bitter and gross. And like how do people drink this? And then all of a sudden, as you kind of like get more acquainted with it, it's like, how can now I can't imagine going a day
Living
without
without
coffee.
it. Yeah.
So yeah, it's almost there's my metaphor for David Lynch. It's
Yeah.
like, when you are starting to get into coffee when you're younger, and then
Yeah, I mean,
and then you can't
I
imagine
was
life
thinking of
without
like
it.
a metaphor too. Like I'm like, I don't know, some along the lines with some food or something
Hmm.
like maybe like sushi or something like that.
Yeah,
Like raw fish is new at first and weird, but then all of a sudden that's all you want or
yeah.
whatever, and there's nothing like it, and it's one of your favorite things.
Just like I remember my first time watching a David Lynch movie, I also remember the first time I had a poke bowl and being like, huh, it's just straight up raw fish. And then I had it and then it changed my life. So yeah, that is maybe another good analogy too.
This is very light and good for me.
Yeah,
I could eat
and
this every
delicious.
day.
Yeah, so that's what I feel like. I feel like I had a good like sort of gradual build
Yeah,
into
yeah,
now I feel like I'm like I'm definitely not as a big of a David Lynch person as, people who have, I don't know, been watching his stuff for years, but
Yeah, no, me
I feel,
neither. Yeah, I
yeah,
have people
yeah,
who I know plenty of people who are more into David Lynch than me. Like at
yeah,
least like maybe his like movies, you know what I mean, or like
yeah,
way more
yeah,
into the world of his movies and like have watched Twin Peaks like multiple times, and I'm like,
right, yeah.
yeah, I haven't done that, like
Because there's even sometimes I hear like a character mentioned and
yeah,
I have to like look them up or like re remember who they are.
yeah.
But yeah,
No,
that's what's,
some people are
yeah,
with Twin Peaks the way like I might be with like Breaking Bad or The Sopranos or some comedy show.
yeah,
And I don't blame them at all. Like for
yeah,
being like I want to kind of get there myself where I've seen Twin
yeah,
Peaks a few times. Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
I think
I
I will
think,
get there.
yeah, it gets me excited to like dive back into Twin Peaks and to yeah, even just rewatch. Once you start really getting into David Lynch, then you want to get into like the person
Yeah.
of David Lynch, who is maybe even more interesting than his
Than the
movies and
movies,
shows.
which is saying
Is
something, yeah.
Yeah, and over time I've like watched plenty of interviews and everything, but really after he died, the next week I feel like I was just watching all of these David Lynch conversations, and
Yeah.
someone even uploaded his whole like masterclass to YouTube, and I like watched that in the background of like working like the day after he died. And there's something just so interesting about, the stories he tells, the things he has to say about life. That's very inspiring, because he seems to have like tapped into that, like the consciousness, the human consciousness that he talks about, that he's just
Yeah.
that he's able to,
If you have a golf ball sized consciousness, when you read a book, you'll have a golf ball sized understanding.
It's like
he,
he's
the
found the secret juice or something like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. When you listen to him talk, it's like, man, he really has like found out how to tap into your own creativity and life, and to find like the good in things. And I love when he's talking about transcendental meditation, and he's like, the only side effect is negativity goes away, or something. Like it's like negativity brushes off, and you have to transcend in order to get there, and to yeah, it's like listening to him talk, it's like I don't know, you really like listen to what he's saying, and you feel like
Yeah.
he's just on a different wavelength that you want to be
Yeah.
at.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think too, just like trying to do any sort of creative thing on your own that you want to do just for the sake of doing it, just because you enjoy doing it. It's like watching a David Lynch interview or talk. Yeah, I feel like that is a good like boost
Yeah.
to get you stop, get out of your own head, stop overthinking, stop trying to think of like what has to make sense, or what um any rules are that you make for yourself in your head. Just like, yeah, freeing yourself of that. He's just such like a motivating and inspiring guy.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, and then just the way he talks, it's like it's so much different than anything
Yeah.
else. And you feel like it's real. He's not trying to like,
That's what I think too. I don't think he's like bullshitting
yeah,
or some like like people he gets a lot of flack for holding back maybe secrets of his creative process or whatever, but I feel like the way he puts it when he's having those like talks that you're describing, it's very I think he that's like legit how he views it. Like maybe he's not he doesn't explain what happens when he goes deeper into his own brain or something like that, or into his like explorations or into his work. But I don't, who really wants to like hear what happens there? He kind of, I really believe it is like that simple at the end of the day of how he views it. Like, at the baseline of how he at least starts, you know what I mean? And keeps going every day. Um, and it's kind of like he's viewing it sort of like from a child like viewpoint, you know?
Yeah.
And it's very like simplistic in a way that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, that's why I think just like listening to him help I don't know, can help sort of reframe, a negative mindset that you might have about it could be something you're working on or just life in general.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I
yeah,
remember
at
him
least for
getting
me
me through
it's
the pandemic too, like a lot of his videos
yeah.
that he
Even
posted.
those weather reports even too. He's like
Yeah, yeah.
they're so positive and
Yeah, yeah.
they're just like a minute long or whatever, but he always sort of adds a little flair to it to, I don't know, be a nice little boost to your day.
It's a Friday once again. Here in LA, a cloudy morning. Quite a breeze blowing right now. 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 Celsius.
As he always goes, have a great day.
No, I can say that like David Lynch was a very positive thing. Not even like his movies, but just like him as a person during the pandemic. Like it was a very positive thing towards my mental health.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sad, but it's sad to say this. I'm stuttering a little bit, but him dying really got me to like, and this happens with anyone, I guess, is like, oh man, I really should have appreciated like all of this other shit that he did. It's getting me back into him in a way, into
Yeah, yeah.
his work and um just as like I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm glad that I'm like really diving into everything that he's doing more now. I wish it didn't have to be that he died for me to like really get back into that. But yeah, I feel just in the past few weeks of like binging all of this David Lynch content that I feel like it's helped me with just like anxiety or stress about just life, the world, everything that's going on right now. Before he died, I'm using it as a mic stand now, but for Christmas I got his book, Room to Dream, which is not showing up in you can kind of see it's not showing up on the Zoom. But I just got that for Christmas.
Hell yeah.
And so yeah, I've just started it and it's like, wow, it's like I just get this book and then he dies. So I don't know. He's been on my mind a lot.
Same, same. I'm right there
So
with
yeah, I'm
you.
sure.
And
Yeah.
the algorithm like also fed me a lot of David Lynch content and like like reels now can be like 15 minutes. So I remember watching a reel of just like I was at work and my job I can just go on my phone and watch reels and I was like this reel's like I thought it was gonna be 5 minutes max and then it ends up being like 15 minutes of David Lynch talking and I'm like and I end up watching the whole thing just
Yeah,
standing
yeah.
there at work. Yeah.
It's like
And
intoxicating.
I started watching David Lynch. I was in film school and I hadn't started watching David Lynch yet, and I'm hearing him come up from film school people and my film addict younger brother who's like shaming me that I haven't watched David Lynch. And I remember in film school, like we'd see clips from movies that I hadn't seen yet. And it's like this whole new world. It's funny in film school because, you're literally going to school to study movies, really. And like there's
Yeah.
maybe people who are they're making it more practical for them, like they're studying the technical side of things. I did not do it practically. I got a Bachelor of Arts in writing for film and television. That's like there's no job available. There's like, that is nothing, man. So I would literally go to classes and I'd watch movies in the class. So I'd like come from my house, my apartment where I'd been watching movies there, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta go to class now and watch The Shining or something like that. It's like what a fucking joke. But I remember in class, like we saw that Inland Empire scene that we're talking about where it's just like the cross cutting between the girl from Laura Palmer's mom. She's also like plays a mom in Seinfeld. David Lynch and Seinfeld used some of the same actors a lot of times, which I think is very funny because they're two of my favorite things. And I think it just shows that both have great taste in actors because they both pick good actors.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing that scene in Inland Empire and be like, what the hell is this? And like, and also in film school, like every first day of every class, especially like the introductory classes, which are even way more in depth of like studying, like breaking down films, breaking down film history or like film philosophy or all this shit. Again, very useless information stuff, but like
Yeah.
awesome. Like I was so into it. I was nerding out. And but like people go around and talk about who their favorite director is, and I kept hearing Lynch come up, and I'm like, okay, who is this Lynch? I like Tarantino.
Yeah.
I really like Superbad. That's partly why I'm here.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan,
Yeah,
Tarantino. Yeah.
yeah, such a basic bro. But
Is he like one of those guys? Like, does he do
yeah,
stuff
yeah, right. Is he?
like
Dude,
Memento
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember saying that to a film teacher, like, I'm like, Nolan, I think this film where we just watched is influenced by Nolan. And I could tell the teacher was holding back how much he hated
Yeah, I
that
just want to
opinion.
punch you in the face
I
right
want
now.
to strangle
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you stupid, idiotic child.
Yeah. The rest of the class is just a rant on how awful of a take that is. Yeah.
Well, in a lot of the classes, were like I had some teacher, like I had one teacher, he's like he was actually like I thought he was brilliant and he was hilarious, but he was also one of the most pretentious guys ever. And a lot of the class is people just like I remember some students are just like, "Hey, but what do you think about this movie?" And it's like something like he's they have something against. And he
Hmm.
would just go on a rant about why he thinks it's a piece of shit or like why he thinks it promotes fascism or something like that. Um,
Wow. Yeah.
but I would just be sitting there like, this is fucking fascinating. um,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm really doing something with my life here. Uh, but so I had a friend also where we would I'd hang out at his place and we did something really unique together. We would get high and watch movies and
Wow.
and we watched a lot of like the same things for a while. We were watching Casino over and over again. Um, and then one day he's like, "Yeah, let's not watch Casino again." And I was like, "Okay."
What the
And
fuck?
yeah, I was like, "Why are you killing this like
Yeah.
perfect setup we have? We had a perfect setup, and you wrecked it." We ordered Lou Malnati's. We watched the Bulls. I think it was like Dwayne. It was like Dwayne Wade and Jimmy
Oh
Butler at the
God.
time, and
Oh
we were
yeah.
like, "Fucking, these guys are fucking up. We should be winning the championship." And yeah, that was what we did every time. But then he was like, "All right, how about like David Lynch?" And I was like, "All right. I mean, I've been meaning to watch him, so all right." And so first one we did was Mulholland Drive, and might I say that this guy and I probably we smoked weed the way David Lynch smokes cigarettes. So we would obliterate our brains. I would be in that place. I'm like, where am I? How do I get home? And I would somehow get home every time. Um, and so we're watching Mulholland Drive in this state of mind, not the Bulls, not Casino, very brand new world. And yeah, I was confused as fuck. I had no idea what was happening. I yeah, it was just I had no sense of how to watch it or how to interpret it, but my friend was like, yeah, that was pretty cool. We should definitely watch another one. And I was like, all right. And so then we watched like Blue Velvet next time. And Blue Velvet's like simpler than Mulholland Drive. So I think I was able to follow it better.
Yeah.
And then it's the scene where Isabella Rossellini's getting like raped by Dennis Hopper, which comes out of nowhere if you don't know what you're watching, if you've never seen a Lynch, just don't know anything about Blue Velvet. And so it's me and my friend, once again, stoned off our asses in his place, and that scene comes on, and I remember I was like, "Holy shit! Oh, like what is happening? This is so crazy!" And that movie we followed, but we still like I remember, we couldn't say that we understood what we watched by any means, but I think we definitely were frightened and unsettled, and it was a world we wanted to live in, with all our marijuana use and occasional mushroom use that I think we were doing. And I think we kept watching more, and I was lost. I was really lost. And eventually I started to watch David Lynch's like on my own. I think I saw Blue Velvet at the Music Box. I remember watching Mulholland Drive by myself at my place, and I had a roommate at the time, and I think it was kind of late at night, and I think I had the volume up a little loud, and Mulholland Drive gets loud, and my roommate had a job in the morning, and he just kind of came out and grabbed the remote and turned the volume all the way down and he's like, "There's a lot of shouting in this movie," and I was like, ugh, he probably doesn't even get David
you,
Lynch.
you don't get it, man.
Yeah.
It's surreal,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What are you doing going to bed for work in the morning? You should be up taking in this Lynch shit like me, expanding your mind, you know?
Transcending.
Yeah,
Yeah.
transcending into creativity and electricity. Um, So yeah, but I remember seeing Blue Velvet at the Music Box, and everyone was laughing, and I was like, "Oh, this movie's funny." Like that did not hit me at all the first time that this movie's funny. Then I met like my friend Antonio. I think when I went to LA, and Antonio is one of the biggest. He's been on our podcast a couple times. Antonio is one of the biggest David Lynch nerds you will ever meet. He's seen Twin Peaks multiple times. If he has a friend who hasn't seen it, he'll sit down and rewatch the whole thing with him. If you watch Antonio's films, there's clearly so much influence within like his films. And so then I'm friends with this guy Antonio, and I end up watching more David Lynch, of course, because of him. And I think I watched Inland Empire with him the first time. I think he probably watched some of The Return with me. Oh, another thing, like I remember with my friend from before who I was talking to you about, the one we would smoke too much weed. Like we watched Twin Peaks Fire Walk with me, so, but like, I hadn't seen Twin Peaks at all. And so we
Oh,
were
interesting.
even
Yeah.
more cluelessly like, did
Yeah.
not know what was going on. However, I remember watching that and being like, this is one of the fucking craziest, scariest movies ever. But I had
Yeah.
no clue. I had no clue what was going on. And I will say after that, that's probably my favorite David Lynch thing. Out of all of his works, like it goes that and then The Return are like neck and neck practically with
Yeah.
me. Uh, I think Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me is the scariest thing he's done, and maybe the like more than Inland Empire, you can understand it more. And
Yeah.
it's just and if you hear him talk about it in interviews, you could tell he likes it a lot too. Like he reveres it as one of his best works. I'm trying to think what happened next. I think we were like doing the podcast, and I'm watching Twin Peaks The Return. I think there was a one very gray October, November in Chicago, um, where I just did nothing but sit there and watch Twin Peaks content. And I watched the whole thing. And I also was taken edibles from a guy who made them that were occasionally way too strong and would cause panic attacks. But I remember just sitting there, sinking into the couch and taking all that Lynch content. And, of course, it was kind of a dark month because, not only am I just isolating watching Twin Peaks, but Twin Peaks gets fucking dark. And also Chicago was gray and, uh, you know, depressing to be in at the time. So I guess that's like everything with the movies. And I'll kind of do it in the way that you did it, where you first talked about like the movies and stuff, and then you did the man, the movies, then the man.
Most importantly, the man.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've always watched like those interviews, kind of like you did. I've seen the masterclass, and when I was in Chicago, I also like there was a one time I might have told you this where I learned transcendental meditation because I was struggling extremely with anxiety, and it was like people and I actually like I was doing it a lot like for like a couple years, and then I stopped because I was like, what is this doing for me? And then I
Mm.
actually recently in the past couple years, like the last year, I started doing it like again, kind of religiously in order to kind of like manage my brain better. Um, and it's kind of like Lynch. It's like Lynch, Jerry Seinfeld, and the Beatles are all like huge influences of like you should do transcendental meditation, Luke, because of those guys. Like Paul Paul McCartney, look how great he is. Do
Yeah.
transcendental meditation. And it also aligned like all those people I just mentioned, including Lynch and Jerry Seinfeld and the Beatles, extremely important people to me, in all different sectors, and they all happen to do transcendental meditation. And also transcendental meditation just does help me a lot with like my ADD, like focus with anxiety and just all this stuff. And of course, like the way Lynch describes it, Lynch cannot like talk about anything, I feel like, without talking about it. So you
Yeah.
can't help but be like, yeah, I'm stupid if I don't meditate like today. Like I'm stupid if I don't meditate before the podcast today, because then my creativity will flow better, like a
Your
waterfall.
ideas flow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so there's that, and also like I mentioned during the pandemic, like how Lynch got me through it, and Lynch has also like been this guy, like this figure of influence of like I've always like looked up to these people who just I don't know, they just loved to create all the time, and that's just like what they did. And like Lynch is the one who was like maybe more than anybody, not like for any sort of success, not for any industry or whatever validation. He just wants to like create his shit for himself. It always seems like, and that
Yeah.
he's like doing it for his own benefit just because he loves it, because it's fun. He loves it as part of the routine. Like one doc that I really love, other than like say Beatles Get Back or Bob Dylan, Don't Look. I was about to say Don't Look
Don't
Up. What
look
is it?
back.
Don't Look Back. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
was about to say Don't Look Back. I was like, that can't be it. That sounds too similar to Get Back. Um,
Yeah.
but then yeah, and like I love also The Last Dance. And then I also love David Lynch's The Art Life, because even though it's like kind of repetitive in ways, it's like you're kind of just watching him in his happy place the whole time, and it kind of makes you want to find your happy place. And he's very much about the lifestyle of art and creating. And I kind of, especially in the pandemic, because I was helplessly like just stuck. I felt very stuck. I kind of dove into that even like more than I already had. Um, and then I moved to LA, and yeah, like I'm in the like I moved to this like guest house up in the valley, and and David Lynch always talks about LA and how LA is like LA, the light is beautiful and there's space, and like there's space to create.
I live in Hollywood, and I love Los Angeles and Hollywood. I love it because I love the light. I love the light so much. And Los Angeles is spread out. And I don't know what it is about it. I have a feeling of freedom in Los Angeles.
It's like, he just like really he takes ownership over Los Angeles in a way. And I feel like a lot of artists I've looked up to have been way more New York based, and it will always like, make me fiend for New York in my head. Even though we joke around about it, sometimes I'll be like, yeah, it's where I should really be, blah blah blah. But Lynch is one of the few like artists that I've really looked up to that are like so, like, he's never been anywhere but LA. His films have been in LA. He's able to capture kind of the weird mystery of LA in his films like better than anybody. And so I feel like when I came out here, I moved into this guest house in the valley. I'm very like, I've always been very grateful to have it because I have something that a lot of people don't have out here, which is like solitude and space. Because a lot of people have roommates out here in order to live. I don't have the background now. I'll have the background in the next episode, but I just have this like great space for myself to do whatever it is I want to do at all times to make my routine the way I want to be. I have I have like a backyard with space to go outside in the nice weather whenever I want to. I have a nice neighborhood to take walks when I want to. And so when I moved out here, I kind of got into this routine of like, I would get up and I would drink coffee and I would like read a book outside and I would go immediately I would open up my laptop and I would immediately start like just getting lost into the world of sound all afternoon. And I did it. That was like my routine every day. It was like all afternoon. I would take a break. Like I don't smoke cigarettes like Lynch because I don't like cigarettes, man. I've tried. I don't like cigarettes. They taste gross. And plus, I don't need that, man. I've seen people try to quit the nicotine. But so I would smoke weed, which is different from cigarettes, but I'd go outside and smoke weed, and then I'd come back in, get more lost, and lose myself more in the world of sound. And it was like, I look back on it, and that is like a very, I don't think I would have necessarily been like that without David Lynch, his videos and stuff like that, and kind of ingraining that into my head. And I look back on that too. I'm like, dude, like what a wonderful time that was. You just would get up and like be by yourself and make music all day. And then when the sun would set, I'd walk up this hill down the street and look at the valley sunset. And I'd be just like, and it would like to give my ears a break from like all the shit I had been doing to them all day. And it was just great. It was just fantastic. And I would open up my folder of all the shit I had made from the day or the previous day, and I would want to remember. I'm like, oh, what did that sound like again? All right, let's listen to what that sounded like. And yeah, it's just like I don't think I would ever have the discipline I do, like of that, like without looking up to someone like David Lynch. So that I think is more like, other than his like movies, I think that is the bigger influence he had on me, was like a guy who just created like to create, and because that's how he wanted to spend his days. And that's like what I have done a lot of the times for the most part. And I'm still kind of doing it to a degree. Like I remember last week we did our episode on what was our episode last week? Was it
uh, we did
top
our top
10?
10.
Yeah, we did
Yeah.
our top 10. Yeah, and like
Yeah.
I think like all day before before that all day I had been working on stuff, and I did our podcast together, and then I like went for a walk after the podcast and like got something good to eat, and I was like, man, what a wonderful day this was. Like, and then it made me think like, how many days have I really had like that, where it was just nothing but solitude, creative solitude, and things I enjoy, and like things that are kind of in my comfort zone, and like, you know, yeah. So I think that
Yeah.
is probably what I'm most grateful to David Lynch for, is that like those videos got to me. He's like, he has one video with Charlie Rose who's like, having a steady routine, it seems to me, is the way of doing it. Like,
That's yeah, I'm glad you said all that because that kind of brought me back to living in California during the you know the height of the pandemic. And that was also my big first wave into David Lynch and Twin Peaks when we were, podcasting a lot. And I would kind of do the same thing of like I would go outside and enjoy the nice California sun in the
yeah, you had
morning
a
and
you had a
have
really
coffee
nice
and
looking setup out there too, I remember.
yeah, a nice little backyard and have I would read and coffee and I would sometimes bring a notepad and just like doodle or something too and a camera so I can bird watch. And that would be like
Yeah.
my morning routine. And I honestly like and I was working as like independent contractor at the time, so I kind of had my own hours that I would really do my work. So I would try to spend a lot of time too. Like I'd always wanted to do like creative work, and to also just make my own stuff. And I feel like the pandemic was the first time that I really spent time doing that. And that was also it coincided with getting into David Lynch and then,
Yeah.
watching his weather reports
Yeah.
and listening to interviews of him and yeah, I that was the first time in my life, my adult life, I guess, where I made time to just do creative things just for myself and just to do them. And yeah, I think that is really true. Like that's why it's so, I don't know, he's inspiring and also you feel like he's not just some bullshit artist because you
Yeah.
get into those routines and it works and like the things he talks about actually like, you know, it could work for you. Yeah, I don't know if you really commit yourself
Yeah.
to doing, getting into a certain routine or doing something, whether it's transcendental meditation or yoga or taking a walk, like any sort of
Yeah.
thing to really clear your mind and be
Yeah.
creative. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think like in a childlike way, he's very stubbornly sticks with those things.
yeah.
And like he's very about the coffee, he's very about the cigarettes and the things he likes. He has that quote from the Fablemans about wanting Cheetos while he's on the set. And he has like all the shit with the donuts, like I just think
Yeah.
he has these things that keep him regulated to want to be like this mind of a kid, where
Yeah.
like he doesn't want to infect the creativity. I think David Lynch has also been married a shit ton of times, so I think he's also was like even that like stubborn to be like like you're I'm picturing how that divorce goes or whatever breakup with his wife. He's like, get out of my studio,
Yeah.
Isabella, or like, you're messing with my creativity. Like,
You're getting in the mo middle of my transcend. Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it seems he'd be difficult to have, yeah, be in like a romantic partnership with because he's so strict about his own routine.
The art life thing is like, he's got some great quotes where he's like, I hated school. I hated it. Like with, I forget the exact words, but it's like, but like with passionate hate.
I never studied. I never did anything. I hated it so much. I hated it like powerful hate.
I never did anything. And it's just like things like you see things he says and stuff like that. I'm like, well, I remember like hating school as a kid and I don't know, feeling that was wrong, because like I had
Hmm.
parents who wanted me to do well in school and be like, no, give in to the system that is like, you know, give into it. Like that's what, you're supposed to be doing. And there's certain people I've looked up to since that time of hating school. where I'm like they kind of validated that I hated why I hated school. Like dude, Quentin Tarantino didn't even graduate high school, and then he made Reservoir Dogs. That's what I'm doing.
You know who else didn't go to business school? Trace McGrady, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James.
Does he actually say Tracy McGrady?
Yeah, in The Office,
Yeah.
I think he says LeBron, Kobe, and Tracy McGrady.
Who else
Yeah.
didn't go to business school? God, that's so great.
Maybe like the people, persons, paper,
Yeah, yeah,
people.
yeah. That's
No,
the
yeah,
one. That's the goat. That's the best
yeah.
one.
Oh yeah. Um,
Dunder Mifflin.
people, persons, paper, people. Yeah.
I thought this was gonna be more of a rap.
What's rap? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, you need to learn a lot about your culture.
Yeah. You know what? One of the best things is the end credits of Inland Empire. I think that's like one
Hmm.
of the coolest things ever. It's like where they play that
I don't remember it off the top of my
they
head.
they play that Nina Simone song, Sinner Man.
Oh,
And it's kind of
yes.
all the cast and extras who've been playing the
Yeah.
scary people are just kind of in, I think maybe the house, the like Inland Empire house, or the like slash maybe rehearsal studio, and they're all just like dancing, going crazy in front of it to
Yes.
this
Yeah.
song, and that is like one of the best things ever. Um,
Yeah. I don't know. Something I was thinking about too as I was like watching more interviews with him and him, like you talked about him not giving away too much information, but, or, there's that famous now interview where he's like, I think Eraserhead is actually my most spiritual film. And then the interviewer goes, "Oh, can you elaborate on that?" And he just goes,
no.
"No."
You
Yeah.
know
It's
what's
like
kind of
that is
funny is like Eraserhead's the first film, and I
hmm.
don't think it's the first David Lynch film you should watch by any means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. Um
It's weird.
and yeah, I don't know. I kind of I think once you I don't know, I think once you talking about the like end credits reminded me of Mulholland Drive, or when I rewatched that, I didn't remember in the beginning there's a scene. I think it's Mulholland Drive. Yeah, there's that scene in the very beginning where it's like people dancing, but it's a weird like collage type thing. There's something eerie about it, but it's like people dancing and it seems like the 50s or something. And I didn't remember that when I, was rewatching it this time. And then I saw something later that was like David Lynch giving clues to Mulholland Drive. And it's like, pay attention to this, think of how what this person says, or you find out about this in the very first scene in the movie. Like these little like I guess clues that he gave for Mulholland Drive. And I don't know, yeah, it just made me think about everything about his movies and Twin Peaks and what he talks about, like not having to explain things that I kind of like once you kind of get on board with that you almost prefer something that's more abstract or
Yeah.
surreal, I guess, is where it's like there's a mystery around this thing.
Yeah.
You can't really explain why, but there's something like intriguing about it. And I think that's what like seeing these clues that he gave from Mulholland Drive, or not really comprehending everything in Inland Empire. It's like there's a mystery to this that keeps you interested to think of what this could mean. But
Yeah.
it's not necessarily. It's not just like there's no one answer for it.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Yeah, I
yeah,
found that with like Twin Peaks like a lot. I think like Twin Peaks is the David Lynch like I don't know, college course. Like you're
yeah,
taking it to like learn like what the point of it is. And I think the big thing is, especially with the ending of The Return, uh, like not to spoil it, it doesn't really answer any questions. If anything, it makes it just seem darker and more mysterious. And that kind of is the point at the end of the day. I don't know
yeah.
how else to describe it or put it into words. I think I'll just sound dumb if I try to like explain the point too much, but
I think in rewatching too, it's I don't know, even watching The Straight Story for the first time.
Right, which is interesting because
Yeah.
and I know you rewatched Elephant Man too. But those are like the two Lynch vehicles that are not in Lynch's world, in his universe. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I like The Straight Story a lot before you go on your thing. I think that's a masterpiece of a film and in my top of David Lynch's movies, I'd say.
Yeah, no, it was so good. I mean, I was just gonna bring it up that it's different than, it's very on paper different from all of his movies or
Yeah.
shows,
Yeah.
but there's still there's like little touches of David Lynch in there.
Yeah.
Uh like how like hysterical that woman is who uh or her
Oh
like
yeah, who
car
hits the
breaks
deer?
down and
Yeah, she
hits the
hits the
deer.
deer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And she like
Right.
her whole like frantic monologue is like
Right.
I feel like she could be in Twin Peaks, like this
Sure.
character.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
So
there's like
I think a
little
lot of them could be.
yeah.
Yeah.
But they're all I feel like how they kind of connect too is they're all very like meditative in a way too. The Straight Story is very meditative on life and your loved ones,
Yeah.
family, and getting
Yeah, but
older.
yeah.
Um,
Straight Story
and
really reminded me a lot of Paris, Texas.
oh
And it
yeah,
could be just because I
yeah, that's
just
yeah,
rewatched Paris, Texas last week after we've like filmed our last episode, but it kind of reminded me of Paris, Texas for some reason.
yeah. That's
Um,
interesting. That's a good
yeah,
connection. Yeah.
yeah. Just
Um,
yeah, beautiful movie. Sissy Spacek is also so good in it,
yeah.
and at the ending also is like amazing. I thought the ending was amazing.
Yeah, and uh I guess in watching so I actually Elephant Man and Straight Story were the two I hadn't seen yet, so those were my first watches. Which is interesting because yeah, they do feel different than everything else, but there's always something that sort of brings it back to like you can also tell that this is a David Lynch thing.
Hmm.
And I feel like he has those tells. I don't know whether it's there's like in Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive, there's sort of like a time loop type of
Hmm.
aspect to it, or there's certain character traits that his characters might have, like with the woman who hit the deer, or a woman in distress or being taken advantage of by whether it's the system of Hollywood or the male persuasion. Whatever it is, there's always like something that like he ties in that he creates this cinematic world. Yeah, that's I don't know. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's hard to explain, but it's once you really like get into it, then it's really yeah, like mesmerizing, and you want to just stay in that world.
yeah, for sure. Like watching Straight Story, I was like, this is so much more straightforward than like other films. I'm like, okay, so he's just gonna direct like this guy driving this lawnmower, and then he's gonna like pan as he goes that way, and now he's gonna just do a little single shot on him at the camp, and but yeah, like kind of what you're saying, like there are those little things that are thrown in. They're like, okay, that's a little Lynchian, if you're gonna say Lynchian. I think Elephant Man's a little more Lynchian than Straight Story, but I also haven't seen
Yeah.
Elephant Man in a long time. And I didn't get to it this time, but I want to rewatch it. I've seen those videos about like Mel Brooks talking about passing it along to David Lynch, and that gets me like hyped to see. He's like, David Lynch is a genius. He knocked it out of the park, like, yeah, it's
Yeah, that's
cool.
why I couldn't imagine being like getting into David Lynch if we grew up in like the 80s or something like it
Yeah,
because it would be such a different character because you don't it's interesting hearing Mel Brooks talk about him like seeing Eraserhead and then wanting to
yeah.
get him for Elephant Man, and like that's sort of his like start is
Hmm.
doing that and then moving on to Blue Velvet. It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then like Blue Velvet to me, which I watched like after he died. Blue Velvet to me, when I'm watching, I'm like, okay, this is gearing up for like Twin Peaks is a possible thing. You know what I mean? Like
mhm.
that's kind of what it always seems like to me, even though like that is a great movie that I think really swept the film landscape when it arrived because it was so different for people and people don't know what they're seeing. And like I hear about a lot of creatives who were influenced by that film, who were not even in the film arena. Like musicians or writers were really influenced by Blue Velvet and they like go back to it. And so I think like the trajectory from the 80s is you got Blue Velvet and then you got like Dune where he felt like too much studio interference and then like Twin Peaks, it's kind of like that's kind of like the order of like how his career went. I don't know like how you felt about Dune this time around because you rewatched it. I didn't. I know it's interesting, but I know like I don't know. What did you think like this time around about Dune?
It's I don't know, a very like bonkers movie. I think what I
Yeah,
like about it, I love how sort of ridiculous it looks at
right.
times. The story, I think,
Which is one
is
of the
just
complaints that people will say. And
yeah,
then you see the Dune now, which is very polished and cool. And you can, it's
yeah,
almost like a let's like go away from the mistakes of the past, you know?
yeah. Which I do, I like the Dune movies now, but I'm not like I wouldn't say I'm like big into Dune in general.
No. Yeah, me neither.
Um,
Like some people have Dune from, we just did our top tens. There's people who have Dune in their like top five.
yeah,
And
I've
I'm just
seen it's
like,
funny
nah.
on online. I've seen people talk about like the past year and like movies and like how like Dune could is like a movie that will be talked about for like
Yeah.
years and years down the road. And I was like, I even forgot that it came out this
Yeah,
past
yeah.
year.
Well, and I
Um,
hear people, they're like, what came out this year even? Like Dune? And I'm like,
yeah,
dude, like what? So many more people came out. So much more stuff came out than Dune. And like, and these are like film people. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So then you're like, kind of, you're like, oh, I see why the state of the industry is like not good, you know? Like,
yeah. In a way, it's kind of a bummer. I mean, I like it, but it's just
yeah,
not
exactly.
like it's of course. Yeah, and I like Denis Villeneuve too, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It just doesn't really do the story has never really interested me in Dune in
Yeah.
any version of Dune that I've seen. So that's I don't really
Yeah.
get into it.
It's just like
It's
another
more for
like
the
here's more mythology, you know, like are you
yeah,
into are like this it's like just a different vehicle for mythology, like Harry
yeah,
Potter and Star Wars and I like that stuff, you know. I like it, but I'm not gonna say like Dune is like in my top 10 films or anything
no,
like that. It's just not I'm not that into it.
yeah.
Like that. I think it's great, but
And watching this David Lynch's Dune did make me because I think he was offered by George Lucas to direct Return of the Jedi. It did make me want to
wild.
see
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what he would have done with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I because who knows? I actually like Return of the Jedi. I feel like people say
People,
it's like
yeah, they hate on it.
they hate on it. I actually like it, but I think what if David Lynch took this same story and did something with it? What would that look? I would really want to know what that
Yeah,
would look. I
I do
think,
too. Specifically
um,
like the Jabba the Hutt sequence, how much
yeah,
darker that might be. The Endor Woods stuff. I mean, I'm picturing him doing Endor and the Twin Peaks theme just starts playing, you know.
yeah, it's like aerial shots of Endor and
Dun, dun, dun. Harrison Ford's like, Chewie this way. Like
yeah, Harrison Ford is like the Cooper of
yeah, yeah,
Endor.
yeah. Landed on Endor.
You get yourself a nice cup of blue milk, and you just
Right.
give yourself that gift of blue milk every day. Yeah, yeah. I guess that's honestly what I took away from watching Dune this time. Was like, man, I wonder what a Return of the Jedi would have looked like with David Lynch. Yeah, it's funny. I actually remember I talked to my dad like last year or something about, or whenever the Dune Part One came out. I was talking to my dad about it, and he remembers seeing David Lynch's Dune in the theater in the 80s. And he just remembers everyone who he was with. And then the theater was like, what the hell was that? Like, this is an insane movie, like so ridiculous and pretty and bad. Like they ultimately all thought it was like a bad movie, which I could totally see. Especially around that time, it almost seems like it would just be some like random B movie like straight to VHS or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
like my parents, what's funny is like I grew up with parents who loved watched all the movies like pretty much
mhm,
'cause I think that was their generation like the 80s and 90s they saw it sounded like they saw everything that came out as it came out whether they got it or not, and they remember seeing like the David Lynch movies, which is weird to
mhm.
think, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, yeah, including I think Dune. Like, I think I've heard my mom say like, "Oh, Dune was so bad." I'm like, what? I'm like, Mom, what are you watching Dune for? Like, yeah,
They would just go to, yeah, that was the thing people
it's just
just
what
did.
you
It was just to
did.
go,
Yeah,
yeah.
like they talk about seeing Reservoir Dogs with like their friend, and like their friend being like. Yeah, our friend, he was so grossed out by the Michael Madsen scene and like, you know.
Yeah, I
Uh
feel like people would just go see movies. Well, I mean, even when we were younger too, like, yeah, just see movies,
yeah.
because that's a thing to do. And yeah, it doesn't really, everything's so niche now. People don't, won't go to the theater to see some random movie. Like,
No, not something that
yeah,
they've never heard of for sure.
yeah. I know. I guess I was thinking too when you were talking about, I feel like just all over the place with this, but, I don't know when you were talking about like watching David Lynch in film school and stuff, because I didn't go to film school, but I
I'm
was
actually
in.
thinking about enrolling in film school after hearing
After
about
talking about it, I kind of that sounds kind of sick. You just watch movies all day, like,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Spend thousands of dollars just to watch movies.
yeah. So I didn't go to film school, but I went to, I went to a small school and was in the multimedia program where we had like
Yeah, which is aligned with
film.
being in the film school practically.
Yeah. And I had a couple classes where it was we watched movies, and then our assignment was to go to class, watch the movie, and then our assignment was to write about the movie and like analyze them and stuff. And but my class wasn't filled with people wanting to be filmmakers. It was a lot of like people, there'd be athletes in there who were just in the multimedia major because they thought it might be easy, or they had a small interest in that, or be people who wanted to be like journalists, in broadcast news, broadcast journalism, stuff like that. And then random people like me who just wanted to be in multimedia in some way, but kind of lost, but interested in movies. And there would be stuff like we more obscure things we would watch that people would just hate because, like, I remember seeing Blade Runner, and people really hated that because they thought it was just boring, and they thought it was going to be some like fun sci-fi action movie, and they hated that. Or people didn't like Fight Club, which we watched, because they thought like the movie wasn't what they thought it would be because of the big twist in the end. And it was just when you're talking about it, it was like, man, I wish we would have watched it. We didn't watch David Lynch in any of the classes that I took. But I wish we had, because that would maybe, I don't know. I'd be interested to see like what people thought of it.
Like
And
reactions, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I just feel like that would be interesting to get into, to try and like dissect these movies with a class full of people that aren't necessarily, who are just kind of taking the class because they think it might be an easy class. Just going back to David Lynch being more of like an acquired taste. I guess I could see myself also being like, what the hell was that? Like not really getting it in college, but over time, it's gonna, if you really want to get into something like David Lynch, and something resonates with you, that it's just over time it becomes something that's like you can't imagine life without it. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I guess yeah, that's kind
Definitely.
of,
Yeah, no, I
yeah.
get where you're coming from. Like I had my teacher would literally like give like a lecture before showing a movie because not everyone in film school was interested in watching movies. Some people were there because they're like, I don't know, they want to get like be an editor, get editing jobs, stuff like that. So there
Yeah.
were plenty of people who were there not with real interest in like films, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so I remember like in some of the more intense classes, which I liked because you know, wanted to feel smart and pretentious. I like a teacher would show like a Buster Keaton movie and be like, "All right, you gotta watch this. I watch this movie for fun," like shit like that, you know. And I remember getting triggered. I think we watched The Godfather in class one time, and like I remember getting triggered because a dude in front of me seemed bored, and I was like, "You fucking idiot."
I got the same thing. I would get mad if people didn't like it because it was like different or something.
It
Yeah.
gets really toxic. I mean, my brother went to film school too, and he would talk about how he would complain about other people's opinions about
Hmm.
the movies and stuff. And this is like something I like thought about recently because I don't really live in the world anymore of like where everyone around, like I used to hang out around with just a bunch of people who watched movies all the time, like myself, and I remember just like I'm just surrounded by opinions about movies and that's it. And I remembered it like it just like is triggering, and because people's movie opinions are so specific and they take their movie opinions so seriously. Like even more serious than like politics or something like that, because I think like a lot of these people like their movie opinion is really everything to them. Like they
Their
might just be,
personality.
yeah, dude, like this dude might just work at Panda Express, but because he thinks this about like this movie, it makes him feel like better, you know? So like people
Smarter and yeah.
expressing their movie opinion really is to them like a lot of people do it to inflate their ego, which is what I found. And I kind of then pushed myself away from that. Not only because I would like, I had my own movie opinion that I took seriously at the time. So I would like get triggered from other people and stuff like that. But also just because I was like, this is kind of stupid how like overly critical everyone's being. Like, what are we doing? We're not doing anything. We're a bunch of losers. Like, why are we like talking about like, why are we arguing over Disney Star Wars movies right now? You know what I mean? Like, why are we
Yeah.
so opinionated about Disney Star Wars? We're not doing anything. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it's just all kind of stupid, and I don't really live in that world so much now where everyone's around me seems to have an opinion. But I'll get there. Sometimes I will get there, and I'll find myself there. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot like how opinionated people are about films. Like it's
Yeah.
really like yeah, like I'll find it sometimes in LA. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that like film opinions are a big deal, especially say out here like where I go to Burbank a lot now, and Burbank is not like it's not like the rest of the country where Burbank still like movie going is a very active normal thing, and you'll just go into a
Yeah.
coffee shop and a dude will be like, "Hey, did you see Nosferatu, bro?" And he's like, "That the sky today is kind of like Nosferatu." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't see that. I just came from seeing The Brutalist." And it's like,
That's
but
all
I'm
anyone
like,
talks about is what movie they just got
yeah,
out
but I'm
of.
like, I
Yeah.
love this. I love Burbank. Everyone's just living in this like movie world, you know? Like you know, it's cool. But it will remind me. I'm like, oh yeah, like people are very passionate about their film opinions, which is silly to say from a movie podcast, but I don't think we take our opinions as seriously as others do. Maybe, you know what I mean? I think we like,
Hmm.
you know, that's not as important to us necessarily. Like,
We just
yeah,
like the things that we like. And
yeah,
yeah.
kind of
I
more
feel like
so.
even David Lynch would talk about things that he liked or thought was funny. It wouldn't be like some, if he did like his Letterboxd top four, it wouldn't be like Tarkovsky and all these like pretentious things. He'd probably have some like funny things in there that
Yeah,
he
yeah. I love
um
Jingle All the Way with Arnold
yeah.
Schwarzenegger.
I rewatched Lost Highway,
Yeah, I need to see
which
that again.
I really like. And I mean, not to, this sounds redundant, like we say this for everything, but when I watched it the second time around, I liked it even more. I don't know, it's just one of those things. I like now that I've been on this David Lynch kick too, it's just like I just want more. Like I want to be in this world and it is just inspiring too. I don't know, we've talked a little bit about this. But like even you talking about how when people saw Blue Velvet, like it was an inspiring movie, not just for filmmakers, but
Yeah.
anyone.
He no,
And
yeah, yeah.
I think that's a big thing about him too, because then when you
He
listen to
inspires like everyone. Yeah, like
yeah, because he
yeah.
didn't even consider himself like a filmmaker. He didn't want to go into film initially,
Right,
but then
right.
he I think he said this a few times of like I just wanted to be I just wanted to paint, and then I
Yeah, it's like
found you
I
could
didn't
make
know you could
moving.
just be a painter.
Yeah. And then I learned you can have moving paintings.
So I guess the one thing I have left to talk about is like I like his music. It's very simple. I've listened to some of his albums recently. There's a song in Inland Empire that I really like, and I like the style. Like he does a variety of different styles, but there's this one album in particular, the album The Big Dream. Uh, where he kind of does this, it's like it almost sounds like to me slowed down surfer music,
Hmm.
specifically because of the way like the guitar sounds and the chords. So it's like slowed down, but it's like so it makes it dark because it's slowed down, and then he kind of does these vocals in the very Lynch voice, but then he puts like he processes his vocals to make it like I don't know. It's almost like it's like a mix of punk and it's a mix of like California surfer vibes, like but slowed down. To me, that's how I view it. It's pretty dope and it's very good for like driving around, I think. And
Yeah. I just started playing a song now. It's yeah, I like it.
I don't know. I think yeah, I guess to wrap it up, I think like we're John from the Cinebums. Uh, thank you, David Lynch from the Cinebums. Sad we were
Yes.
never able to have you on the show.
Dream
I'm
guest.
sure
Yeah.
you would have been great. Yeah, I don't think we'd be able to handle it, John. I think we'd have
Yeah,
lost our fucking minds if we actually made that happen.
yeah, my head would burst.
My
Yeah.
number nine.
Yeah, what if we had him on to do his top 10 with us? My number nine, the substance.
Yeah, yeah. It's so beautiful.
It's, I guess something too is you know, I think it's easy to make I don't know. How should I say this? When celebrities die, I think there is definitely like oh you will you didn't even know him. Like how can that affect you that much? But there's few people that you feel like they're like him who they are like more meaningful because he was such a character and didn't seem like he was ever, bullshitting, like we said, or taking himself too seriously, or there's like, you know, demons in his closet or something. And I think, especially when you watch the clips of him like with Naomi Watts talking about Mulholland Drive, or with there's one I just watched last night that was with Machen, Kyle MacLachlan, and one of like a producer from Twin Peaks, and just how much he like genuinely cares about them and how much they care about him, and just it's like, and he works with these same people like over and over again. So it's just like you have to imagine that it's true what they all say, that he is this really magnetic and like great person. Um, and so yeah, he's just an inspiring guy to try to emulate in your own life in your own way. But yeah, I think when watching like those interviews with him, it's also made me try and think better of how I treat other people and my like relationships, and to really like you could tell he takes an interest in other people
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
asks them questions, and it's genuine. So yeah,
Have you seen that
very
interview
sad.
with Harry Dean? Where it's like
No,
it's
but
just very
I
simple, but
want to.
he's it's around always. He's they're drinking coffee or something, and he's like he's like, Harry, who are you? And he's like, and Harry's like, nobody. There is no self.
How would you describe yourself?
There's nothing. There's no self.
How would you like to be remembered?
Doesn't matter.
What were your dreams as a child?
Nightmares.
And
Oh
then
yeah,
like Lynch
yeah.
just smiles like he's so happy to be with Harry, and then he's like, "What are your dreams?" And then Harry's like, "Nightmares." It's wild.
I have seen that clip
Like these
where
guys are fucking crazy.
that's so funny. Yeah, I've just seen the clip of Harry Dean going, "There is no self," and then them laughing.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
guess one more thing, like one more like Lynch influence thing to bring up is like we were talking before about his influence on other art forms like music or something. And one of my favorite musicians ever, other than like the Beatles, is producer Mike Dean. If you know me real well, like you'll know I'm very into Mike Dean. And uh I went to his birthday show last year, and like The Weeknd came out, and The Weeknd is singing in like that one song from Eraserhead, In Heaven, which is like an original. David Lynch song,
wow,
and it was so cool. It was just so cool to
that's
see
yeah.
The Weeknd's version is obviously great.
That should we end with "Have a great day"
Yeah, yeah.
or the weather report at our own
Here in
place?
LA, 75 degrees,
Here in
beautiful skies.
here in Minneapolis, it's cloudy and 23 degrees,
Yeah.
but I feel like the sun is just around the corner. If you can believe it, it's Friday once again. That's he would say that too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, and he would
Uh,
like show things of like he's just like building like a drawer,
yeah.
like a little small drawer, and he's like so into building that drawer. And I'm like, yeah, I could definitely be into building a drawer too.
Should I just maybe I'll build a drawer today too.
And I'm like, you don't know how to build a drawer.
Yeah.
Don't even try.